My name is Satyanshu Singh. In 2020, I had conducted a series of lectures to raise money for coronavirus charity. This lecture on Kumbalangi Nights was conducted in association with Lost the Plot on 29th May. About 70,000 rupees were collected through the lecture, all of which went to 20 different NGOs and funds providing relief during the pandemic. This is the third part of the lecture in which we discuss the characters of Kumbalangi Nights. I hope you enjoy listening to this.
When you create characters, you need to figure out why is this character suffering. What is the biggest suffering of this character, which will make us empathize with the character. Protagonist में agony word आता है. Agony मतलब होता है conflict. Agony मतलब होता है suffering. So if you are creating a protagonist, the protagonist must suffer and the audience must root for the protagonist or understand the protagonist's pain. Understanding someone else's pain by getting into their shoes is known as empathy. So we empathize with Frankie because Frankie is not proud of his family. He doesn't feel at home with his family. There's absolutely no one to take care of him. And that is why we understand his pain and we empathize with Frankie. Bonnie is also suffering, but he isn't aware of his suffering because Bonnie has left his home. So Bonnie also lacks a family, he lacks a home, he lacks brotherly love, but he has decided to cut himself away from it. But if the character is not going through that suffering, we won't empathize with them. So what they have done is they have given Bonnie a physical suffering, a physical handicap. He can't speak. Now see that they have not played on it. If they play on it, that becomes pitiful. We start sympathizing with Bonnie. Instead of making that suffering a sympathetic suffering, they have made it an empathetic suffering by making Bonnie cool about it. So Bonnie can't speak, but he's still an attractive character. Since the character is attractive, we continue to feel the suffering of Bonnie without feeling pity for him. Now you would say that, isn't it same as not having a family and still being okay with it? Yeah, but it is just too obvious because that suffering is inside the head. This is obvious. In every scene we see Bonnie can't speak. So here we have taken a cinematic suffering, a suffering which can be shown on the screen. You'll see that these two characters have suffering which are not strongly connected with the plot. The suffering of Bobby is he has fallen in love with a girl and he wants to have that girl. The fear of not uniting with baby. That fear is Bobby's suffering. That forms the plot. Similarly, Saji's suffering is when his friend dies and all the grief and guilt that he goes through. That is Saji's suffering. That also is a very important part of the plot. So Bonnie and Frankie's suffering is a part of the internal change, yes, but not a very strong part of the plot. So when you have four characters, all four characters have a suffering which is a very important part of the plot. It may get too much to handle. So you have two characters whose suffering forms the plot and four characters whose internal psychological inner suffering forms the internal journey, because internal journey are not spelled out, right? They appear light because cinema is visual medium. So you have two characters whose suffering is driving the plot, but not four characters. And also notice that Frankie and Bonnie's suffering are kind of overlapping. Frankie doesn't feel home at home. Bonnie doesn't feel home at home. Frankie does not have a good relationship with his brothers except Bonnie. Bonnie doesn't have a good relationship with his brothers except Frankie. So Frankie and Bonnie's suffering are exactly the same almost. What this does is this gives us reasons to empathize with all of them, but make sure that the plot remains simple. This is not Game of Thrones. You don't have 8 seasons. You have 130 minutes. So you'll have to pick and choose. And of course, we empathize with Baby because she's living with Shammi and because she wants to marry Bobby and Shammi won't. So because of those two reasons, we empathize with Baby as well. Also, Baby is working really hard for her homestay. So when a character is really working hard for something, we empathize with that struggle. So again, we empathize with Baby, we empathize with all 5 of them and see that we have reasons to love all 5 of them. Why we love Bobby? Kitna bhi nalayak hai, cute hai ladka. You look at Bobby and you can tell that a girl would have approached him in school. Ye cute hai ladka. Not just face, like his entire demeanor, like the way he smiles, the way he walks, his choice of music. his sense of humor, despite his flaws, Bobby shows us hope that he'll change because there's baby in his life. People like Bobby will change once they have a girl like baby in their lives, right? So that little hope is giving us a political commentary without really making it explicit. And there's that beautiful scene where Bobby is telling baby that we are not meant for each other. We are as different from each other as possible. And in that scene, baby says that I am a piscivore. I love eating fish. And you are great at catching fish. So she doesn't say the next sentence, but her next sentence is, we fit each other, we complement each other better than any other person. Because you are amazing at catching fish and I love eating fish. So in that scene, she is telling Bobby that we are meant to be together. We are, made for each other. Because of these reasons, but also because of Pixar's first rule of storytelling. We care for a character not for succeeding, but for trying. Bobby is really trying to earn baby. So because of all these reasons, but mainly because Bobby is an active character, not at the beginning of the film, but like Karan Shergill in Lakshya, he becomes active when he falls in love. He's a likable, attractive character because he's active. Frankie is attractive. Why? Because Frankie is smart. We have established very early in the film that Frankie is smart. We have not played on it, but we know he is smart. He's a good footballer. He's a smart guy. And notice that it is Frankie who is using his scholarship money to build a toilet in this house. All the elder brothers could not build a toilet, but Frankie is building a toilet for these people. When Frankie comes home in the first sequence, he cleans the house, he washes, he catches fish, he cooks. When Saji, the eldest brother, needs to go to a psychiatrist, it is Frankie, the kid, who takes him to the psychiatrist. So Frankie is likable because Frankie is unlike his brothers. Frankie is not like his brothers. Frankie is bright. Frankie wants to stay clean. Frankie wants to eat well. Frankie wants to bring all four brothers on the dining table together on the remembrance day of his father. That is why we like Frankie. And why do we like Saji? We like Saji because Saji makes us laugh. Saji is like the youngest brother because Saji is a comic character. Comic characters are not heroes. Comic characters are non-heroes. Comic characters lack skills. They don't have skills. They lack skills. Like Saji cannot use a proverb correctly. And he doesn't understand that he's using it wrong. He's like a man-child who doesn't have insight into what is happening. But he has an innocence. He has a purity. And often he is someone who is first to take charge of things for the better. In the opening sequence, when Frankie tells them that it's the remembrance day of our father, Bobby keeps eating. Saji lights the candle. When they go to meet their mom, and after that meeting, they are in a bar and Bobby is cursing his mom, Saji tells Bobby that don't curse her. Saji has a goodness which always tries to take charge, but because of his non-hero trait, he fails. Remember when Bobby goes to start fishing in his life, he joins Saji. There again, Saji has taken the first step. Saji is always the first person who will do something to improve things. Maybe it is because he's the elder brother. Maybe it's because he has an inferiority complex which others don't have. All of them are good at things. Saji is not. So maybe that forces him to, okay, I'll take the first step. Papa ka remembrance day, theek hai, candle jala dunga main. So he's always the first person to act to make things better. So again, Saji has a relentless activeness to him. Now, one final thing. Baby is not flawed. She's almost perfect. Like she is sweet, but she'll also stand up and fight if need be. She's wise, but she's also childlike. She is motivated and she can motivate others. Baby is perhaps the best human in the film. Are you guys bothered about it that baby has no flaw? Are you guys worried about it? If yes, why are you worried? Does it spoil your movie experience? If no, Why do you think baby being perfect is fine? If you are fine with baby being perfect in a way, why are you fine with that? If you see this film as a story of four characters who are not evolving, who are not changing, until one of them falls in love with a girl, you need to add solid causality to the internal arc of change. The internal arc of change cannot happen by chance. It has to have a solid causality. Why do these people change? Because baby comes into their lives. That is why they change. You can say from drama point of view, when you're looking at the brothers as protagonists, baby's character is a mentor character. A mentor character or a catalyst character. A catalyst character is a trope or it's an archetype in many movies. Professor Dumbledore doesn't have any obvious flaw, but it is perfectly fine because he's the mentor character. Elizabeth in Lagan is amazing, right? She's amazing. She is better than Bhuvan in many ways. Yeah, she is just mind blowing as a human being. Elizabeth is fine because she's a mentor character. She's the catalyst. So understand the power of a catalyst character. Understand the power of a mentor character. Remember that in life, it is impossible to have a human being who is not flawed. But also remember that cinema is a medium where you have to write with great economy. So when you have so many characters, it is okay to have one character who is like this because that character anchors others. That character becomes a reference point. That character highlights the flaws of other characters. If your film was a single protagonist film with baby as the protagonist, then I would say you would need to show her flaws as well. But otherwise, it's okay because it's a multiple protagonist film. If you are writing a film which says that we need women in our lives to make our lives better, to make our house homes, then give me a female character who is amazing, but also so endearing that her presence does not preach anything. Her presence make us learn by falling in love with her. Baby teaches us not by becoming Gandhi. Baby teaches us by being who she is. A sweet, endearing, happy, positive person. So baby is not flawed also because baby serves a political interest in the film, a political point in the film that you need to have a girl like baby in your life in order to be a better person. Let me sum this up with, when you're writing a movie, make sure that at least your protagonists are such that each protagonist is attractive and interesting and empathy inducing for different reasons. They are very different from each other, but they come together as an orchestra. They must provide you with enough diversity, enough variety, but it should not go out of hand. So Bobby wants to marry baby, baby wants to marry Bobby. Two characters, same want, sorted simplicity. Bonnie and Frankie, they don't belong with their brothers. They hate their other two brothers. Two characters, similar internal struggles, simplicity. Only three characters have strong role to play in the plot. Because if all five of them start playing important role in the plot, it may become difficult to handle. So on one hand, you are looking for variety, but on the other hand, you are doing everything to keep things simple because it's not a show, it's a movie. You have only 2 hours. With 5 characters, you have hardly 20-30 minutes per character. When you're creating these characters, make sure they are really complex, like human beings. But when you are showing these characters, since it is a multiple protagonist film, you do not show the complexity of every character. Baby is not, we don't see the flawed side of baby. It's okay because it's a multiple protagonist film. When you're creating the antagonist, the villain, what is the most important thing to keep in mind? The most important thing while creating the antagonist is that the antagonist should be the most powerful and dangerous character in the film. The ocean and the iceberg in Titanic. Can anything be more powerful than that? The audience must feel like the protagonist will win, but how? Simran's father in DDLJ is not a dangerous bad man. but he will never say, "Beta ja ji le apni zindagi." Secondly, the antagonist must be extremely interesting to watch, whether it is Captain Russell in Lagan, or Gabbar Singh in Sholay, or Mogambo in Mr. India, or Joker in Dark Knight. What happens is, when you have a character who represents the dark side but is interesting to watch, it forces us to be charmed by him. Apart from making the story a more rich and more fulfilling experience, it reminds us of our own hypocrisy. This guy is like evil, but we are attracted to him. And the third thing to keep in mind is, in his head, he should be right. From his perspective, he should be exactly right. From his perspective, he is the protagonist of his life. He's not the antagonist. Shammi believes that he is the protagonist of his life. Shammi believes that he is the hero. Shammi spells it out in the climax. In the climax, while fighting, he says, "Shammi, hero." What this does is, it forces you to look at the world from your antagonist's eyes. So you will not look down upon your antagonist. You will find a way to look through their eyes. So you will not create an antagonist. You will create a human being who plays the role of the antagonist in your film, in your story. And the fourth thing is that there has to be some kind of suffering that the antagonist is going through. How much you play it is up to you. But if you feel that Joker is not suffering, I think you are wrong. Joker is suffering, maybe he's not aware of it. Amitabh Bachchan in Mohabbatein is a great example, because he's an antagonist who we very strongly empathize with. So he's clearly suffering. So these are the four things to keep in mind. Why is Shammi suffering? Shammi is suffering from insanity, like Joker in Dark Knight. Shammi may not be aware of it, but he's suffering, yaar. He needs help. He's mentally unwell. Otherwise, you'll create a caricature of an antagonist. You'll not create a human being.